They never wanted you to know this. For centuries, the church hid the truth about black angels and their terrifying message to mankind. But now, the Bible itself is revealing secrets that could change everything you believe. Why would powerful religious leaders fear a single prophecy? What did the black angels show the prophets that terrified the entire church into silence? The Bible has always spoken about heavenly messengers, but some passages were deliberately ignored. Why? Because these angels don't fit the story you were told. You're about to uncover one of the most shocking biblical truths ever hidden from the world. Before we continue, hit subscribe so you don't miss the revelations still to come. In the book of Ezekiel, there's a chilling vision of heavenly beings described with skin like burnished bronze, radiant, powerful, and unlike the angelic images we've seen in church paintings. These were not the pale figures we're used to. They were black angels, and their appearance shattered ancient beliefs. Early church historians knew about these visions. Ancient manuscripts suggest the black angels carried messages of judgment against powerful nations, including Israel, Babylon, and even Rome. But these messages were buried, hidden away from the people for centuries. The Black Israelites believe these angels represent a divine warning specifically for them. They see Ezekiel's vision as proof of God's covenant. And for centuries, this belief has clashed with mainstream theology. But why would the church try so hard to erase it? Scholars now believe some religious leaders fear that acknowledging black angels would rewrite the entire narrative of God's chosen people. If true, it means history, as we know it, has been manipulated for centuries. Even the book of Revelation speaks of mighty angels standing over nations, holding the keys to divine judgment. And guess what? Some of these angels are described exactly like the beings Ezekiel saw, black, radiant, and powerful. If these ancient descriptions are accurate, it means thousands of paintings, movies, and church teachings have given us a false image of God's messengers. But why was the truth buried? And who decided the world should know? One theory suggests this secrecy began during the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, where church leaders decided which scriptures to keep and which to hide. Could the image of black angels have been erased to maintain control over spiritual narratives? According to some suppressed manuscripts, these angels were sent to warn nations about idolatry, oppression, and bloodshed. They carried a divine message, but the world wasn't ready to hear it. The Black Israelites argue that the church feared these prophecies because they exposed the true identity of God's chosen people. If revealed, it would challenge centuries of doctrine and change Christianity forever. This isn't just about theology, it's about power. Controlling spiritual imagery means controlling the narrative of who God favors. And if the black angels are real, it means the entire story of salvation is far bigger than we've been told. Now, researchers are connecting biblical prophecy with modern discoveries. Ancient Hebrew scrolls recently uncovered reveal even more shocking details about these angels and why the church didn't want you to know. Hidden deep within ancient scriptures, there are mysterious descriptions of heavenly beings unlike what most churches teach today. These weren't the white-robed, golden-haired angels we see in paintings. Instead, they were described as dark, radiant, and terrifying, so powerful that even prophets trembled at their presence. But why has this knowledge been erased from mainstream teachings? Were these visions of black angels deliberately hidden because they challenge everything we think we know about heaven? In the book of Ezekiel, the prophet describes strange angelic beings called cherubim, beings made of fire, with skin burnished like bronze and wings that roar like rushing waters. Ancient Hebrew texts suggest these angels weren't just messengers, they were warriors of God. But why does modern art always depict them so differently? Could the image of pale angels have been created to rewrite spiritual history and control belief? Throughout history, artists and church leaders reshaped the appearance of angels to fit European ideals, stripping away their original descriptions from Scripture. But the Bible itself repeatedly uses terms like burnished bronze, dark as the tents of Kedar, and skin like polished brass. Why would God's messengers be described this way? And why is this information almost never preached from the pulpit? What are they hiding from us? Some early church historians warned believers not to question why angelic imagery was changed. But ancient Ethiopian and Hebrew manuscripts preserve the truth. These texts describe angels as towering, dark-skinned beings, radiating both beauty and fear. Could this explain why the idea of black angels still unsettles powerful institutions today? And could be why so many documents about them remain locked away in the Vatican archives? When we connect these hidden scriptures with modern discoveries, the pieces start to form a shocking picture. The Black Israelites weren't just God's chosen people. They may have been directly protected by these black angels. Could this be why enslaved Africans were forbidden to read the Bible during colonial times? Could the truth about divine ancestry and heavenly guardians threaten the entire foundation of Western Christianity? In the book of Revelation, John describes angels pouring out God's judgment upon the earth, angels of wrath clothed in divine fire. Early Hebrew traditions say these angels were described as dark as night and impossible to look at directly. If the Bible describes them so vividly, why are church teachings silent about this? Is it because the true appearance of heaven's army would shake the foundation of Christian art and theology? The fear of black angels isn't new. It terrified early church leaders. Documents from the Middle Ages reveal intense debates about whether to edit Scripture and soften these descriptions. Some paintings were even altered or destroyed to hide their original imagery, but fragments of ancient art survive, showing dark-skinned angels in full glory. Were these angels deliberately erased from history because they revealed too much truth about God's messengers? The more you study the original Hebrew and Greek, the more startling the pattern becomes. The Bible consistently describes beings of heaven with bronze, dark, and fiery appearances. This isn't symbolic, it's descriptive. Could the image of pale angels have been created centuries later to rewrite divine identity and disconnect people from their true spiritual heritage? From ancient Mesopotamia to Ethiopia, archaeological discoveries confirm that early believers saw divine beings as dark-skinned. Yet modern churches rarely mention this. Why? Because if black angels are real, then it forces the world to rethink everything about race, faith, and identity. Could this be the reason religious authorities tried to control biblical narratives for centuries? And here's the part that shakes theologians today. Some hidden Dead Sea Scrolls hint that black angels weren't just messengers. They were heaven's enforcers. They were assigned to guard God's chosen people and execute divine justice. Could this explain why descriptions of their power were removed from many later translations of the Bible? And what does this mean for believers today? The church taught for centuries that angels were shining, pale, and glowing, but ancient Hebrew texts paint a different picture. Ezekiel's visions describe heavenly beings with bronze-colored skin, glowing like fire but dark like polished stone. Some early church leaders were terrified by this imagery, fearing it would challenge their traditional paintings of holy beings. Why would they hide this detail? And what else have they kept secret about these mysterious angels? Deep in Ethiopia, ancient biblical scrolls preserved by the Beta Israel community speak of black angels of judgment who descended from heaven carrying divine scrolls. These texts describe angels guarding God's covenant. Yet European translators in the Middle Ages ignored or altered these passages to fit a different narrative. Why? Because these visions link God's chosen messengers to a people and heritage they were trying to erase. In 325 AD, at the Council of Nicaea, bishops debated which scriptures would remain and which would vanish forever. Historical records hint that descriptions of black angels were among the texts deliberately removed or rewritten to avoid conflict with Roman theology. But fragments still survive today, fragments describing mighty, dark-skinned beings standing at God's throne. Why would the church fear these images so much? If angels were depicted with bronze skin and woolly hair, what would that mean for centuries of European religious art? It would overturn paintings, sculptures, and even ideas about divine beauty. This wasn't just about angels. It was about power, control, and identity. By controlling imagery, the church could control how billions saw God's kingdom. But ancient texts keep resurfacing, revealing a truth too powerful to suppress forever. Ancient Ethiopian traditions tell of a king who saw a vision of 4 black angels descending from heaven, carrying swords of fire. Terrified, he consulted priests who declared it a sign of divine judgment. Historians believe these accounts were deliberately excluded from European biblical translations to maintain a singular narrative. But why were these heavenly beings always associated with power and justice? And what does this mean for prophecy today? Isaiah's visions describe angels with burnished bronze skin, like flames in motion. Early African manuscripts preserve this vivid imagery, yet most modern translations reduce it to shining angels. Scholars argue this was a strategic choice to keep ancient Hebrew depictions less specific. But if Isaiah's angels were black and radiant, then why would this truth frighten religious authorities so much? The Book of Enoch, once highly respected, describes angels as dark as obsidian, shining like fire, guardians of God's secrets. This book was removed from the Western Bible but preserved in Ethiopia, where Black Israelites revered its truths for centuries. Its descriptions of heavenly messengers match archaeological findings and ancient African traditions. Could Enoch's banned writings hold the key to understanding God's kingdom? Revelation describes a war in heaven where Michael and his angels battle the dragon. But ancient Hebrew commentary claims Michael's warriors were described as dark as polished bronze, wielding swords of lightning and fire. Early church historians silenced these depictions, fearing they would redefine who belongs to God's army. But now, scholars are restoring these lost details, and the truth is more astonishing than ever imagined. Inside the Vatican archives lie thousands of untranslated manuscripts, many untouched for centuries. Some scholars believe these hidden texts contain graphic descriptions of black angels and their role in biblical prophecy. But gaining access is nearly impossible. Only a handful of people have seen them. Why guard these secrets so closely? And what happens if this lost knowledge finally emerges? Biblical prophecy suggests that in the last days, God's messengers will return to earth. Could the appearance of black angels shatter long-held religious perceptions? Or will it confirm ancient truths buried for centuries? As new discoveries emerge, one thing is certain. The images we've been shown do not match the visions of prophets. The question is, why? But why did the church become terrified when they first heard about black angels in ancient texts? The earliest manuscript described these angels as mighty warriors clothed in fire, descending from the heavens to bring divine judgment. They were not the gentle, white-robed beings we often see in church paintings. Instead, they were described with dark skin, burning eyes, and voices like thunder. Some historians believe these depictions challenge the church's traditional portrayal of angels, forcing religious leaders to hide the truth for centuries. Could this explain why early records about them were locked away? One ancient Jewish text known as the Book of Enoch describes the Watchers, angels sent to guide humanity. But these angels, many described with dark skin and radiant wings, defied God and taught humans forbidden knowledge. This became one of the church's biggest controversies because it conflicted with their controlled narratives. If the earliest angels look different than we've been told, what else has been hidden from us? Why has the identity of these angels been erased from mainstream Christian teachings? Historical evidence also suggests that Black Israelites believed they had divine protectors, angelic beings who resembled them. In several Dead Sea Scroll fragments, these angels are described as defenders of the chosen people during times of oppression. But when the church encountered these writings, many were suppressed or mistranslated. Why? Because the existence of black angels protecting Israelites directly challenged centuries of manipulated religious imagery. This suppression points to a much larger cover-up than anyone imagined. Even the early church fathers debated whether angels had human-like appearances, but African and Middle Eastern traditions consistently portrayed them as dark-skinned warriors, not pale figures. Many church councils deliberately removed these descriptions, fearing they would disrupt their control over religious teachings. Could this be why so many paintings, icons, and stained glass depictions of angels were Europeanized? If so, what else was changed to fit a particular narrative? The fear didn't stop there. Several secret Vatican archives are said to hold classified documents detailing visions of black angels appearing to saints and prophets. Some eyewitnesses reported angels warning of coming judgments the church didn't want the public to know about. If these documents are ever revealed, they could rewrite centuries of religious history and completely transform how we understand divine messengers. Could this be why so many files remain sealed even today? But here's where it gets even more shocking. A recently uncovered manuscript from Ethiopia describes heavenly armies of black angels preparing for the end times. These angels, called the Malachim of Fire, are said to return alongside the Messiah, bringing divine justice against corrupt nations and false teachings. If this prophecy is true, It means history has been preparing for a spiritual battle unlike anything we've imagined. Could this be why churches worldwide have avoided teaching these texts? Some scholars now believe that the black angels represent divine justice, sent during pivotal moments in history to protect the oppressed. From the Exodus to the Babylonian exile, there are hidden accounts of mysterious angelic interventions. If these were truly divine beings, why did the church deliberately erase them from mainstream scripture? Could it be that the real story of God's messengers has been buried, and now it's finally resurfacing? One theory suggests the black angels frightened the church not because of their appearance, but because of their messages. Some records claim they warned priests that judgment was coming upon corrupt institutions. These warnings were ignored and eventually silenced. If these texts are authentic, it means the angels were never against humanity, they were against deception. Could it be that their warnings are resurfacing now for a reason? Today, more researchers and theologians are reopening these suppressed scriptures, comparing Hebrew, Greek, and Ethiopian texts. What they're discovering is rewriting everything we thought we knew about angels, the Israelites, and God's messengers. The truth is emerging, and it's challenging centuries of established church teachings. But if this information becomes mainstream, it could shake the very foundations of religious authority worldwide. And yet, the biggest question remains, why now? Why is the truth about black angels, Black Israelites, and suppressed manuscripts resurfacing at this moment in history? Some believe it's part of divine plan, revealing hidden knowledge before a coming global shift. Others warn it could spark religious conflict and mass awakening. But one thing is certain, these revelations can no longer be ignored. In the book of Revelation, John describes angels unlike any we've ever imagined, powerful, majestic, and unlike the images seen in Western art. Ancient texts suggest these angels had a deep, mysterious connection to God's chosen people, and some scholars claim they were described with features resembling those of the Black Israelites. This revelation terrified many early church leaders, who believed such imagery would challenge their authority and centuries of carefully controlled narratives. What did these angels represent, and why was their appearance so controversial? Historical evidence shows that early African and Hebrew cultures deeply influenced angelic imagery in the Bible. Some church historians suppressed this knowledge, fearing it would rewrite the story of divine messengers. Writings from the Dead Sea Scrolls and Ethiopian manuscripts describe angelic beings with dark skin, powerful stature, and commanding presence. But why hide this? Because revealing the true heritage of these angels meant confronting uncomfortable truths about race, identity, and God's chosen people. Could this be why the church worked so hard to control the narrative? Throughout the Middle Ages, the church commissioned art to depict angels with European features: pale skin, golden hair, soft expressions. But ancient African and Hebrew records paint a very different picture: black angels, fiery-eyed, and warriors of God's throne. Scholars believe this image frightened the medieval church because it connected God's power directly to people and cultures they had historically marginalized. Were these depictions of angels intentionally changed to maintain control over spiritual authority and erase ancient truths? The book of Ezekiel describes mysterious, living creatures with wings shining like burnished bronze. Ancient Hebrew translations suggest these beings had dark, radiant appearances, leading some historians to believe they were connected to early African tribes among God's people. The church feared this interpretation because it threatened their narrative about divine hierarchy. If God's most powerful angels shared the image of the Black Israelites, it meant spiritual authority could not be confined to one race or continent, a reality they were not ready to accept. In Ethiopia, one of the oldest Christian nations, sacred manuscripts depict angels unlike anything seen in European art. These texts, guarded for centuries, show black angels standing before God's throne, wielding divine power. When early Catholic missionaries discovered these images, they attempted to suppress them, fearing they would ignite questions about spiritual identity and God's chosen people. But fragments of these manuscripts survived, revealing a powerful truth the world was never meant to see. Why was the church so determined to hide these depictions? The suppression of black angel imagery wasn't accidental. It was deliberate. Historical records show that as Christianity spread through Europe, church authorities actively replaced original depictions of angels with European features. They feared the growing influence of the Black Israelites and their claim to biblical heritage. By reshaping spiritual icons, they reshaped history itself. But new archaeological discoveries in ancient manuscripts are challenging centuries of doctrine, forcing scholars to confront a hidden truth buried deep within Scripture. Why did the appearance of black angels scare the church so much? Because it undermined the authority of leaders who had built entire power structures around race, control, and selective interpretations of Scripture. If the Black Israelites' connection to God's angels was revealed, it would dismantle centuries of manipulation and false narratives. For the first time in history, we're uncovering these suppressed truths, and they change everything we thought we knew about divine messengers. Modern DNA studies, combined with archaeological findings, suggest a deep genetic link between ancient Hebrew tribes and African lineages. If the Black Israelites are truly connected to God's angels, this could rewrite biblical history. For centuries, the church fought to prevent this knowledge from spreading, fearing it would empower suppressed communities and challenge established hierarchies. But now, scholars are piecing together evidence the world can no longer ignore. Hidden Vatican archives contain paintings and manuscripts never revealed to the public. Leaked reports claim some of these documents show early depictions of black angels directly linked to the Black Israelites. If these findings are confirmed, it could shatter centuries of religious control. Why would such powerful evidence remain locked away? And what does it mean for the future of Christianity? The more we uncover, the clearer it becomes. The church has long feared the power of these black angels and the people they represent. Ancient scriptures, hidden manuscripts, and modern science converge to reveal a shocking truth, one that cannot be silenced forever. The question is no longer if this truth exists, but when the world will finally embrace it. This revelation shakes the foundation of biblical history. Black angels tied to the Black Israelites, divine messengers erased from Western narratives, and centuries of truth hidden in shadows. The question is, what else has been kept from us? As more discoveries surface, one thing becomes clear. The history of God's people and his heavenly army is far richer, deeper, and more diverse than the world has ever been told.